Thank you.
Where are we? Transfers.
It's a contract, and if you give a better update, there's
What's
some,
the,
no, there's nothing that you can, you ask the question. It is of a contract to do with the schedule, I believe it's scheduled to be open in the spring.
if it becomes.
Yeah, and their state.
What's that?
We are now at quorum, so we can get this thing to order.
Tyron's on his way up.
Tyrone is coming.
Yeah, he's on the elevator.
Good.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Jim said he would be here. Tim says he should be here.
Todd, let's go. All right, I'd like to call to order the August board meeting of Greater Western Transit Company, and we'll begin with introductions. Campbell, I'm chair of the board and represent the city of Richmond here.
Hello, my name is Andrew Gore. I'm from the city attorney's office and filling in this week for Leanne.
Good morning. I am Julie Tim, CEO of GRTC for my last board meeting.
Tyrone Nelson, and Michael Brown.
Morning, Todd Garrett, right this year.
Good morning, I'm Dan Schmidt. I'm also with the Michael County.
Jim Engel, Chesterfield County.
Alfred College City.
Lincoln Saunders, City Richmond.
Andy Smith, Chesterfield. Gary Armstrong, Chesterfield.
All right, this one over here would be great.
Good morning, Chief of Training Operator. Anthony Clark, Director of Business.
Monica Carter, Safety Service Compliance Management. State Director of Planning and Scheduling.
Mike Frontiero, Director of Communications and Marketing.
Jonathan Draw, Chief Financial Administrative Officer.
Kelly Murray, Bus Stop Chief. Adrian Ford, Chief Development Officer. Mark Smith, Chesterfield County Transportation. Ashley Smith, Manager of Organization Business.
Janelle Harper, Procurement Services.
Tanya Thompson, Director of Procurement.
Antoinette Haynes, Procurement Services Administrator.
Joe Diller, Director of Federal Innovation Legislative Policy.
Tony Bird, Director of Maintenance.
Becca Hurst, Director of IT. John Longo, Information System.
Cheryl Adams, Chief of Staff. Good morning, Don.
Good morning, Diana Moore Clark, Office of Equitable Trade and Mobility, City of Richmond.
Ken Lance, Flint, RBA. Karen Moore, Flint, RBA.
All right, Mike, do we have any, we have no written public comments. Do we have some other public comment?
No public.
Anybody like to speak? All right. Golly. So, could I have, would you look at the minutes and could I have a motion to approve them, please? So moved. Second. Any additions or corrections? Anybody complain? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The minutes of the last meeting are approved. We'll move forward to the consent agenda. So I trust you all have looked at this, but are there any questions? Is there anything anybody would like to bring off this agenda for discussion, or is there anything you need, any questions about it? It's a pretty impressive set of actions here.
Can I ask a quick question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
On the essential infrastructure plan, assuming that it's adopted today, we certainly have the ability to revisit and update, et cetera, throughout the year, correct? This doesn't become a set in stone
Yeah.
plan.
It should be a living document. It should be a policy guide to allow us to have, or allow GRTC to have a framework to move forward, a framework to get funding, a framework for our partners to start building, but it should be revisited. It actually should be revisited at least annually, if not more recently, more than that. And if you look at the package, it actually does say that the staff will report back to the board at least annually on the status of the infrastructure being put in place. And my recommendation would also be that as this board puts together a development committee, that they get a more frequent update as well.
yeah, I see this as a, you know, a commitment to a substantial piece of work, which you guys have tried to make sure that we committed ourselves to. Lincoln, you've read the thing, right?
Yeah.
And it feels right to you so far.
I think that's kind of part of the, honestly, just getting it as part of the board packet and, reviewing it, et cetera. I'd love to just be able to sit down with the staff and talk it through and be able to just know that it's on the table for future discussion as needed. If there's ways we can do more faster or just keep pushing it forward.
Well, please do, because it is an exciting thing to get this happening. Other questions on the consent agenda? Okay, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded that the consent agenda be approved. Any further conversation? All in favor, say aye, please.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, it's been passed. So let's move on now to procurements, Wisconsin.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Good morning.
I have one update to share with you today. On the second page of the upcoming procurements document, found on page 30 of your board packet, we have added a security assessment project for risk management. Staff needs a consultant to perform a threat and vulnerability analysis to identify and report current weaknesses, design and implement a security plan for different types of threats, and train staff on executing the developed plan. The assessment is estimated to cost $30,000, and we anticipate contract award at the end of this year. The expense is included in the FY23 budget. This concludes my report. Are there any questions about any of the projects on the document?
There was a news release that we had received $11 million, sorry. You know, what's a million now, right?
We get a little empty.
Pretty soon you're talking about real money here. $11 million or so for the project of the church lot next door and the building. Would you just describe briefly what that is? It kind of makes this $400,000 look a little bit.
I probably am not the best one to review that scope with you. I'm looking at Adrian for support here. I can tell you that we are in planning, in the planning stages of that church lot, demolishing it, doing some remediation work, and making a determination as to what we're gonna do with it. how
So
it's
we've
gonna
already
serve.
pulled down 450,000 for that.
I'm gonna defer to Julie.
Go for it.
I think that Adrian would be excellent to answer this. We do have there, to do that properly, there's several steps. The majority of the money that we did, the grant that we won was not for that property. The majority was for bus replacement. And Sam Sink and Adrian Torres can give a lot more detail about the process that we're going under for the.
So
properties
who
adjacent.
would like to report on that and when?
I do have it to go into the CEO's report, but I'd be more than happy to have Adrian help that now, should the board choose to. hear
Go
now.
for it, Adrian, let's do it.
I can clarify the two different, the one in the procurement report is for doing the study for remediation plan, and to get us ready for what the funding actually goes for. So it's about $1 million of the 11 million is for demoing and paving the actual church lot. So we prepare in the future for doing an actual assessment of what the full facility plan is. The other $10 million is for the
So the strategy for the property that's adjacent to us has been in a state of significant disrepair for some time. When I first got here, we were looking to demolish it. There were questions about the state of remediation of the building. There was questions about how many sinkholes there may or may not be on the property, what we could use it for. We have done geotech studies. We are now looking at the remediation needs. This next money they work in the federal, now that we're moving along, will allow us to remove that building, remove that risk from us, but also to pay that we're experiencing a shortage of space for where to park our buses, especially as GRTC looks to expand and looks to have articulated buses. That lot will become a temporary storage area to be able to use and store those buses as they're being maintained. And then another study will be accomplished, possibly in conjunction with North-South BRT, to look at how that property is used for the agency as well as for the community in the future.
It's being used at all right now. in capacity?
It's being used to store materials on the exterior. We do not use the interior of the building because it is in such a state of disrepair.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions about this, Danny? You want to say something? Yeah, this was the mysterious lot. Thank you, Tanya. Mysterious lot when I came on board. It's becoming, they're about to blow out the mystery on it and pave it and make it useful in a definite way. And that's which federal thing is that from? Is that the infrastructure fund?
Well, the infrastructure bill has 5 years worth of money, including a lot of the formula funds and discretionary grants. In this case, it's called 5339 discretionary grants,
Okay.
not our normal formula. And I do have a lot more number. I can tell you now, or I can wait to the end of the report, but if you're interested, it's that 5339 discretionary grant was in the infrastructure bill. It had $1.7 billion available this year for discretionary low, no, and zero emission and bus facility grants. There were 530 applications to that across the nation. The request was for $7.7 billion across the nation for that program. So it was very oversubscribed. They expect this to be the first of 5 years. So there will be opportunities for people who didn't get the money to go after it next year. I believe that this agency should continue to go after the money because we received a significant award. Will be less likely to get in the future, but there are needs for electrification and for new zero emission fuels. We received the 10 million for the CNG conversion. We have about 30 buses that are still on diesel. This will help us move very close to the complete conversion to CNG, which was initiated under Mr. Cole's time with us. Very, very advanced sited to be able to move us towards that lower emission, and the 1 million for the demolition and repaving the annex. That will be one less thing on my CEO report.
Yeah, I told you there were billions involved. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Staff reports, Mr. Carter, safety report.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm going on the safety performance report for the month of July. It's found on page 31 to 35 of the board package. Starting off with external events. Overall, we did have a decrease from the month of June to the month of July. This can be attributed mainly to the decrease in non-preventable incidents that took place. We did have one increase in the offensive language category of verbal assault. Operated in passenger did have a verbal exchange. And overall, we're looking at, of course, this time of the year, when students are coming back to ECU and students are starting to come back into the school. So we're reminding the operators to make safe decisions, pay attention to their surroundings, and doing all calls and ready to make sure that's being done. And if there are no questions, that concludes the safety performance report for the month of July.
Are there any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Harm.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, everyone. Starting on page 36 of the board package, the KPIs pretty much stay constant. We've been experiencing the last few months. Just want to go over staffing real briefly. We'll see that staffing level is sitting at 234 full-time, 27 part-time operators. Since that report, we've actually graduated 5 operators this past weekend. And last month, we actually graduated 9 operators. So we're definitely seeing some positiveness for those folks that have been in training over the last few months. We still have 21 operators in various stages of training. We have a class starting the end of the month on the 29th. Looking at another maybe 7 or so next week. So we're still on pace for a class every month as we move forward to get those numbers up to where we need to at our current moving level. So roughly we're about 14 drivers short. All right.
14,
Yes.
you're seeing a net increase.
Yes, we're seeing that gradual increase, and some of it is a combination of those operators that we had particularly through the system, and fewer operators leaving. As you may remember back earlier in the year, we had double-digit losses, averaging per month around 10 or 11. Last month, we only lost 3. So far, we lost 5 operators, but one of those was a promotion, and one was a retirement.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Thank you, sir. Mr. Byrd.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm here for the maintenance report. It's found on page 38 of the board packet. Basically here for any questions if everything's in the board packet. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep maintaining. All right. Sam Singh.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, you're referring to the chart on the report of your board packet. So you know that local pulse and express ridership continue to show positive growth month over month. And you'll see that local ridership is up almost 14% from the pre-pandemic level, so that continues to be a positive trend. The express routes continue their strong summer of growth. But we do still have pretty ample capacity on most trips. We are keeping a very close eye on that. If you need to know, through 29, the 405 trip back out to Gaskins does continue to be a little high at about 35 riders per trip, but we're prioritizing coach buses on that route. Those do have a higher seating capacity at 57, so we still have capacity there, but we can do pretty much. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Carter.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'll be reporting on the water comments, which can be found in page 101 package. Basically, we have a total of 123 complaints for the month of July. You also notice on page 42 of the packet, we included a trend report. This kind of provides an at-a-glance view as to how we're trending from one month to next to the next, as far as the categories that were listed. I will also note that we had some areas where we had some increases, unfortunately. We also had some areas where we had decreases, and one area where we actually stayed the same. Also, if you notice on the bottom of that treasury report, we have a category labeled other or miscellaneous. This is going to capture the complaints that are not captured in the categories that are listed. For example, there may be things where individuals may have complaints or comments regarding the mobile app not working properly, or maybe there was a broken bench at one of the bus stops and so forth. That's where these complaints will be listed. Lastly, there were 5 accommodations for the month of July, 4 of them were for operators and 1 for admin staff. So this concludes the report, a complaint report for the month of July. Did you have any questions for me?
So I'm looking here at verified or passed up passengers, no shows and late schedules. Is that kind of our normal level? I mean, passed up passenger and no show is a real killer for our service. So it's 24 of those this month. Is that about where we've been running?
It's been a little, it's been in the ballpark. We've had a slight increase for this month, which we're, of course, with the help of transportation, monitoring those areas, so that we can take corrective action with those. But yes.
Elders, does that sound normal to you?
I'm not up on it because I think this is just a second
Yes.
second report
Yeah.
that was given.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Thanks. So, John, Mr. Zingarella, we have a financial report.
Morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. On page 43 in your package, you will find the June 2022 finance report. So I'll start with on page 44, which is the key highlights. So for the 12 months, and these are all unaudited, we're in the process of our external audit with Brown Edwards, and that audit will be done by October 31st, and we're going to bring Brown Edwards to the board in November. So right now, unaudited, the 12 months ended June 30, 2022, revenues are unfavorable versus budget by $2.79 million. Very much similar as the prior month's reporting. The unfavorable federal funds are due to the lower than budgeted operating expenses, which are offset by the favorable state government funds from GRTC. As you recall, we received an incremental $6 million based upon the ridership formula in the months of April, May, and June. On the operating expense side, operating expenses actual performance was below budget by $5.6 million, as we had reported previously. This is primarily driven by lower than budgeted headcount in transportation, maintenance, and administrative functions. Favorable risk management expenses due to the impact of the favorable impact of participation in the Virginia liability pool. Lower than budgeted purchase transportation expenses. There was Spectran, which is basically due to lower demand. These favorable were offset by higher than budgeted materials and services over the last 6 months due to obviously inflation as well as supply chain issues. So we're seeing unfavorable expenses for the cost of C&G, spare parts and equipment, and slightly higher utility costs. Overall, for the 12 months ended June 30, 2022, currently we're at a surplus of $2,755,000. At the prior meeting, we had forecasted a favorable net operating surplus for the year between $3 to $3.5 million. Slightly below, this was slightly below our forecasted because we had some additional legal fee provisions associated with the advertising policy appeal. We had to factor in the legal expenses, as well as we had at the end of the year the provision for uninsured claims. So that kind of just brought us out. The two combinations of the two of those were about $370,000. So we were kind of, that's the reconciliation for our prior report. Balance sheet and cash flow. We have a strong balance sheet with cash position of $1.85 million, of which $7 million is in the operating fund. So nothing negative to report there. And the remaining reports that I've included in there, I included on page 64 is the CDPA report that was filed with the CDPA in advance of October 15th. With that,
questions? Thank you very much. So now we have two board committees that have met. First is the committee working on the search, personnel committee. Mr. Nelson, do you want me to do that?
Yeah, I appreciate the board members. I missed the meetings, Ben and Joe and your team works. I think it was
Yeah. All right, thank you. So the we did a couple of things at this. The first was to well, it's the order, but we do need to add two members to this. We agreed we would. Our problem is, Mr. Engel and I looked at this, that with a 3-member committee, quorum is 2. And what that means is that you're theoretically not even able to have a one-to-one conversation outside the meeting without it being legally required to be public. If you have a 5-member committee, the quorum is 3, but any 2 people could talk outside the meeting anytime. And Jim and I felt probably be good to add 2 members to this committee. It is not, this is a relatively short-term committee. Its only purpose is to set up the search process and to help it to happen. This is not the committee that will, this committee will not decide on the candidates for CEO. It is simply, so I would, if it's all right with you all, I'd suggest we add 2 members to this. And I'd like to suggest Mr. Coles and Danny, if you would join this committee for 1 or 2 meetings, it would help. And if those nominations are acceptable to y'all, I think that we could move forward with that. Okay. Any objection? That work? You guys willing? You're all right. Thank you very much.
I think we had to vote on the committee.
Yeah, you do. So would you want to move that? Is that okay, Jim?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? Done. Thank you. All right. The second piece is we actually went ahead and the staff had done a procurement, an RFQ for a private contractor to help our people from the human relations, human resources roundtable, who are going to help us do our search process. But they felt, and we felt, and the staff felt that it would be helpful to have a private firm that it really is into the industry and has personal contacts with many people to help procure and advertise. And so we put out an RFQ. We got back. We put it out, what, 11 different 9 groups. 3 responded. It was very, one was very strong and was very clearly we wanted. They're also the low bidder. And so.
And the contract was also vetted by the city and county HR team.
Yes, excellent. And Jim and I both thought it was right, that this was the right way to go, but we wanted you all to be able to approve this contract to go forward. And that's, I think it's here for you to see. It's a good search firm. And our people, when we approve this, our people are prepared, our human job, bless them all. But anyway, they're prepared to work with these people and get us going on the search for a CEO. So, Mr. Engel, would you like to move that we approve this? Is there a second? All right. Would you like to talk about it at all? I think we're fine on it. Okay. Moved and seconded that we approve this contract for executive search services. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that's done. So that's my report. Yes.
For a matter of order of priority. I know that we haven't had committees before as a board. One of the standard methodologies or the standard practices for approval of items is, of course, for a motion and a second and the board to approve it. If something is motioned to come to the board out of a committee,
You don't
it
need a
typically would
separate
not be a
motion.
second.
Yeah, you don't need a separate motion. All right. All right, so that's it for the Personnel Committee.
Did we set a date for the next meeting?
We have not yet done so. Okay, but I think we do need one as soon as possible to help get this thing going.
Yeah, I'm sure Joe can help us do that. I apologize. I missed the meeting. Some of you may know my dad was in hospice. He died this past Friday. So that's why I wasn't at the meeting.
Yeah.
So I'll be there going forward.
Well, condolences, Reverend Nelson.
Yeah, I didn't say that to say.
No, but I'm saying it because I feel it, and it's tough. And thank you for being present today. All right, so we have this finance committee thing. Gary, you got that?
Yes, we had our inaugural finance committee meeting last week, and we covered 3 topics. One was our CBTA annual CPI discussion, calculation around that. There's a little more work to be done there, so we decided to defer that to the next finance committee meeting. We also had a discussion around GRTC pension. We're going to get a presentation at the finance committee level by our pension manager and get a better feel for what's happening there before we'll move anything forward there. And then the third topic was contingency funding. We do have a recommendation and motion for the board. As you guys probably remember, we approved taking our contingency funding up to 25% of our adopted operating budget. So, now we need to really understand how we're going to fund it, when, that sort of thing, and how it can be used. And so in our meeting, we discussed that increases in the funding of the contingency fund would be brought to the board of directors for board approval. Any amount, is that correct, John? We decided any amount? Yes, any amount. 2 ways to access the contingency fund in an emergency. If the contingency fund is utilized for cash flow purposes, short-term funding, i.e. less than 60 days, for a funded purpose or program, the CEO will notify the board of directors of the use of the contingency funds at the next board of directors meeting. Secondly, if the contingency fund is to be utilized for an unfunded purpose or program, the matter is to be brought before the board of directors for board approval prior to the use of the contingency fund. Improved uses of the cash flow purposes that the CEO would notify the board of use of the contingency funds. We really only added one thing beyond the others that are listed here, and that would be payroll-related expenses. And so with that, we're recommending that the board approve and adopt the contingency funding policy as presented in this document.
My document has green and yellow on it. That's just.
Yeah, that was hard to read, so John gave me a different one to read.
But this is just for emphasis or something.
That's right. Yeah, John, any other explanation on the color?
No, the yellow was what we presented to the finance committee, and then after the input from the finance committee was the green revision. So I just wanted to show the progression.
So we're keeping the 25% target. Is that correct? But any additions to the fund as present at any moment would have to be approved by the board. So at a meeting, you would say, I've got 50,000 I want to put in.
I think the general thinking though is that this is going to be more likely to align with an end of year surplus where you would do a significant deposit, not a month to month sort of small transfers.
All right.
Probably most likely in the month of November when we bring the audit and close it out, that would probably be the appropriate time to make the motion for addition.
Questions? All right, you have before you this the board motion, the committee motion, therefore that this be the policy for the contingency fund. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. Good work. All right, so now we have some board policy items, and the first, which Mr. Engel and I are very happy to see, and Reverend Nelson, is about electronic communications, so that we know how that goes. You want to tell us about that?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, again, my name is Andrew Gore, filling in this month for Bonnie Ashley as counsel to GRTC. And Bonnie has prepared this policy. It's a policy regarding participation in meetings by electronic communication means. It would allow, under very limited circumstances, for a director to participate in a board meeting or a committee meeting by electronic communication means. Importantly, this is different, very different policy from what's permitted in the state of emergency, such as the electronic meeting participation procedures under what happened under COVID, for example. Of course, in the absence of a state of emergency, typically the rule is that all board members must be present in person. But this policy, under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, this type of policy does allow, again, under very limited circumstances, which I'll run through. Notably, the Freedom of Information Act provisions provide very limited flexibility in what's permitted. It's essentially, this policy is what FOIA allows, and there's no flexibility there. First, importantly, a physical quorum of the board must be present in order for the meeting to go forward.
Board and committees.
Yes, sir. Board and committees, this policy would apply to both. If there's a physical quorum present, a director for any 2 meetings in any calendar year, or up to 25% of the total meetings of the body for the calendar year. If a director may request to participate in a meeting by electronic communications under 3 circumstances. 1, a personal matter which is specifically identified, a temporary or permanent disability or other medical condition that prevents the director from participating, or a family member's medical condition that requires the director to attend to that person. In the event that a quorum has been convened physically and a request comes in to comply with one of those requirements, the board can vote. The chair would entertain a motion, and the board would vote to allow the person to participate by electronic communication. I believe that's the basis of the policy. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
May I ask a clarifying point, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Under section 2, part B, it talks about the limit of the number of times someone can do this virtually. It says 2 meetings or 25% of meetings per calendar year rounded up. Now that normally we have 12 meetings a year, so that would be 3. However, I have a question about the particular committee. Is it separate, or do we have to add up all of the meetings or committee meetings divided by 4? And that's the number.
That's a great question. Actually, I have Bonnie is still considering that issue. How the overall board meetings and the committee meetings work together with respect to that requirement still under consideration. She's going to come to a determination on that and advise the board.
So you have to let the chair know in advance. It has to be approved at the beginning of the meeting. Simple as that. And we have to have a physical quorum in all cases. So for y'all, that's 2 from each delegation every time. Right. Okay. I don't think this needs to be approved. This is what it is.
So it does need that
It
information.
does need to be approved. Anyone move it? All in favor? All opposed? Thank you very much. Now these next items, let me just say, since Julie came in, she basically picked up a bunch of anomalies that were hanging around in terms of policy here, including our relationship to the Old Dominion Transit Management Company stuff, which, I still don't understand, but apparently we have to keep it. And our relationship to RideFinders, which you are in fact the board of. And then some clarity on the board and corporate leadership structure. Julie, being a very fastidious person and intending to try to get things straight, worked out proposals on all of these. She's going to present them to you. We can pass them at this meeting, or we can kick them down the road for a month. But I really appreciate the work she's done on this, and so I encourage you to stay in touch with her, trying to learn what she's telling us here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first item is the adoption or the consideration of the board policy for corporate leadership and board leadership. When I first arrived here, I went through the bylaws, and it is required by corporate law that we have a president, a secretary, and a treasurer, and there could be vice presidents if necessary. The board didn't function as that they had to be members of the board of directors for those positions. So annually, those positions were elected from the board. However, those positions didn't actually function in those capacities for the organization. How they actually function were as chair and vice chair and support for those roles. The position of president was typically filled in action by the CEO. The function of treasurer is filled in action again by the treasurer. And then the secretary, we have internal staff that help with meeting minutes and agendas. This policy would align the structure, the leadership structure of the organization with actually how we're functioning. It wouldn't change anything in our function, just make sure that it is clear. So as you move forward with new board of directors and a new CEO in the future, that it is clear to everyone whose role is what and how you would actually nominate and elect annually your chair and your vice chair. I did review this with Bonnie and with legal, and they say it is consistent with the bylaws now that allows for staff to hold those corporate positions, and it will help with the continuity of management and governance decisions in the future. It's my recommendation that we consider this and adopt at this meeting, or consider it for future adoption prior to at least the October board meeting, where you will have new board directors coming on board.
Questions, thoughts? Have you all had a chance to read this before? Do you want to run it by your own legal people? Of course, Bonnie is ours both ways.
I was just going to ask, because it's, I don't see anything in any of these bylaw changes that I'm concerned by, but I also don't have like the red line version. I think it may be helpful to have the red line version to do a comparison before we have to act on any of these bylaws.
I apologize, I actually meant to put those in. So the first one, the proposed policy, there is no change to bylaw. That's just the policy that would be adopted by the board. The next four, C, D, and E, I'd be happy to send you the changes. There are not a red line changes, and I can go through why we didn't do a red line changes on those in a moment. Well, okay, so again, 4 different actions. The policy on leadership structure is not a bylaw change, it's a policy. The C and D are bylaw changes for ODTMC and RideFinders only. The changes to those bylaws are dramatic. And that's why we didn't do a red line, because it would be impossible to read. For ODTMC in particular, those bylaws were written in 1973 and have not been updated since. They have our corporate headquarters in, I think, Cincinnati or Philadelphia, Cincinnati. They have a 3-member board that's very much aligned with when the ODTMC was held by a separate corporation. So honestly, those bylaws have no applicability to what we do today. The bylaws that are proposed for ODTMC are in direct alignment with the bylaws that were adopted by this board for GRTC, with the exception that the shareholders of ODTMC are GRTC, not Richmond, Chesterfield, and RICO. And so when the board takes action, this board of GRTC takes action for ODTMC, and for shareholders of GRTC, it doesn't have to go beyond this board. It just stays here. But it cleans up those bylaws. The originals are in the packets that are in the new board member orientation, but to do a red line version would be to red line the entire thing and substitute. So it's more of a substitution for ODTMC. For RideFinders, the change there is almost the same exact issue. RideFinders was set up in 1998. It was a 501c3. Well, it might have been set before that. I'm sorry. It was set up as a separate organization before that. In 98, and I can give more detail on this. GRTC acquired the controlling factors of that. It's still 501c3. There are no members, but in those bylaws, the GRTC board is also acting as the RideFinders board. In the RideFinders policy, that is the 6-member GRTC board, not the 9-member. There's also a secondary part of the RideFinders policy that sets up an advisory board. Now, the details in the bylaws are pretty extensive as far as what the two boards should and could do, and it makes any changes in the future challenging, because then you have to do bylaw changes as opposed to policy changes. Again, a complete substitution would be in order to align the RideFinders bylaws in function with the GRTC bylaws, having a 9-member board. And the quorum rules also would apply to ODTMC and RideFinders. So it's consistent among all organizations who is a membership and the quorum rules and how the bylaws are then changed. So again, instead of a red line version, it would be a complete change. The other change for the RideFinders bylaws is currently the RideFinders bylaws includes an advisory committee. Mr. Uri can tell us a lot about that, but the final proposal here is not that policy board be eliminated. It's that it be shifted out of the bylaws to be shifted as a policy organization, exactly as written in the bylaws, but as a board policy, a board committee. And it's important to maintain that board because not RideFinders is a 501c3, and there needs to be a separation of some sort to maintain that 501c3 status. So the advisory board does play a significant role in maintaining that status. But in the future, when this body wants to change bylaws and wants to do a consistency, I found when I first got here 3 years ago, it was incredibly challenging to untangle what was valid, what was relevant, what was current, and what was actually current practice versus what was legally in our bylaws. And I found a lot of inconsistencies. This again wouldn't be an amendment so much as almost a complete substitution to keep alignment of the organizations with the GRTC directors and bylaws. I know there's a lot of words, but I just want to explain what we're doing. And again, there is no need to adopt this today. It's just a matter of, it's something that really should be cleaned up, and we just do it prior to your next board of directors and CEO coming in October and beyond. And I did also have Williams Mullen and Bonnie both look at this, and so they all gave corporate approval that this is consistent with our umbrella agreement, as well as our GRTC bylaws, as well as corporate law at the state level. The one consideration, of course, is the maintenance of the 501c3 status of RideFinders that needs to be handled generally.
What y'all want to do? Want to run this by your people?
That'd be my preference.
Yeah. I think I really do appreciate, she's really tried to go after this stuff, and it's arcane, some of it. The little piece on the RideFinders thing, you know, in their bylaws, they've written in their how they do their advisory committee. She suggested pulling that out so that it's a matter of policy. We'll do the same thing, but it won't be written in the bylaws, so you couldn't mess with it.
I appreciate the attention to these details, et cetera, to get it cleaned up for the next go around. But to that point, just, and if we could request to see the original, I mean, I know it's extensive, but still would be interested in red lines that do exist. Just be helpful for context.
Absolutely, I'll get those out today.
So would you like this on the next month's meeting? And in that case, Cheryl, make sure we get this on there. And you guys get this run through whatever you want them to do, so we can get where we need to get. Okay, thank you very much for that. And now it's time. God, this meeting's moving fast. And there are refreshments coming too, which is good news. So keep going.
So I do have more than I, for the CEO's report than I have in the past couple of months. We have a little bit more time today because we ran for this. The first thing is actually relevant to what we were just discussing, and that is that reminder to all board members to go back to your board of supervisors and your council members to remind them. A letter will be coming later this week or next week, that the annual shareholder meeting for GRTC by our bylaws would be set on October the 19th. Typically, that is held at 8 a.m. and it requires the chair of GRTC, as well as the proxy for Richmond and the proxy for Chesterfield to attend. We would need those proxies to also bring in RICO nominees so that all 9 representatives would be nominated and elected at that October 19th meeting. Reminder that the following board meeting for GRTC would be slipping to the following Tuesday by practice to October 25th at 8 a.m. And it would be at that time that you would elect your officers. If you change the policies at that time for president, vice president, chair, or vice chair, you would do that as well at that October 25th meeting. There will need to be some consideration by this board in the future on how you do elections for these officers, the chair and vice chair, since you have less than a week between the nominations and election of board members and the need to actually nominate and elect your chair and vice chair and your corporate officers. So for those who are new to the process, I just want to bring that up now because we have to give you 60 days notice and we are entering that window for that consideration. Also, through by board action, you have set up your committees. I'm very impressed and pleased the finance committee is moving so effectively, and there are a list of items that have been brought up for future conversation. I believe it will serve you well as you go into your budgetary process over the next several months. Reminder that you also have the ability now to set up the development and operations committee, as we are looking at some pretty significant operational changes, the downtown transfer facility and how that's implemented, and some significant development changes, also the downtown transfer center and North-South BRT. I would recommend not waiting too long before the establishment of those committees so that you can begin hearing some of the more detailed actions about what is going on in the region with our shelters, with our infrastructure, with park and rides, with some of the safety programs that we put in place, with our staffing programs. You can get more detailed reports in those committees. Some of the projects that were supposed to come onto this board package but did not because they just weren't ready, I hope they will come up next, is that we are looking at live feed on our buses. I believe this will be a significant safety enhancement to allow our dispatch as well as potentially first responders to see it live onto our buses when there is an emergency and situations going on, rather than waiting to be able to pull those videos after an event occurs. I think this is a significant improvement for the safety of our riders and for our operators. And there are some other parts of that package that need to be pulled together before it came to you for approval. But I look forward to watching you from afar and see that move forward. I believe that it will be a significant safety enhancement for the system. Associated with that, we'd also want to put together a mentor program for our operators. We've been speaking about this for some time. The proposal that I received was beyond my authority to approve. So we're looking to see how we might have you to bring that to the board or pivot it as a pilot to get that mentor program together for our operators to have that internal resource to be able to talk to each other with people who understand with passion and empathy what they face in the streets, similar to what happens with first responders. It's a great program. It just, the quote that came in threw me out of procurement guidelines of what I could do. So that will also be coming forward. We already talked about the $11 million from the 5339 funds. I would like to point out that Sam Stink and Adrian, her team, did a wonderful job putting that application together. We've been going after this money for many years. This is the first time it actually came through for us. It will save us a significant internal resource, state resource, to be able to have this program here. It's a huge win. And I just couldn't say how much I appreciate staff putting it together with the help of the RPT as well, supported us in application. And our senators and Congress people who also supported the $11 million coming to this region to support us. It is, I will just reiterate, it is the first year of this type of funding over 5 years. We should not give up. There will be other opportunities we should apply, but receiving this much in the first year means it might be a couple of years before we win again. And the last thing I have to say, and this is a lengthy list, I was surprised when I put together, was to say thank you so much for this opportunity to serve. This is my last CEO report. And as I reflected back over what this board and what this organization has done over the past 3 years, I'm humbled by what we have accomplished. Nobody expected us to be facing the states of emergency we faced. We have, and I'm going to read this list because again, I forget how much we've done in the day-to-day operations of keeping this place running. I think outside this agency in particular, people don't see what we do. They don't know how much we've done. They don't know how much this board has approved. and what we have done to stabilize and maintain service through the most extreme conditions of our generation. We have implemented and maintained zero fares, which has had a significant improvement in the life of our riders throughout the region and through the economy of the region. I believe it has been and will be a significant draw to businesses across the country to come here, to know that we are investing in our workforce in this way. We protected our staff and our riders from COVID from day one, utilizing local businesses and local resources quickly and efficiently and effectively to get hand sanitizers, wipes when there were none, to get a local distillery to give us pure brew distilled bourbon that, we used to wash our hands, meant for washing hands. It was a little bit disconcerting to walk through our foyer and smell bourbon, but that's what we had. And it worked. We had families around the region hand making masks while they were home from school. Children, pictures of children who actually support us by volunteering their time to hand make masks when we could not get any. We had our staff working 40 hours a week and then 40 hours a week on top of that. And then sometimes on top of that, to get those protective equipments in place, to look for inventive ways to put sneeze shields up for our operators, to be able to get the rear door boarding and to protect our staff and protect our riders so that they could use this service, that we didn't shut down the entire 3 years we were here, with the exception of, I believe, 2 days. One for the BLM marches, and one, I believe, we shut down for a snow event in 3 years. I believe that with the shelter plan that we have in place now, which will allow us to put in place a significant enhancement in shelters and benches and to be funded by millions of dollars with partnerships with the region, is a plan that we have not had before. And this is an incredible advancement that was just approved by this board, and we should be applauded for that. That we are able to turn around our staff losses. We have had less losses with our staff than we've seen with other agencies across the country, and we are turning that around where other agencies have not. We've increased our fleet cleaning, where we were cleaning our buses less than 4 times or once every 4 days when I first got here. Under COVID, we're cleaning them every day, and we're increasing the number of cleaners that we have on staff and the number of cleaners that we have around the region to keep our system sanitized. We also did not clean our shelters and our benches when I first got here. We cleaned the pulse station, but not the shelters. We have since switched that, and now we have a crew that goes out and power washes the shelters and the benches and the concrete to keep them in a better sanitized state and a state of good repair. That is something that was approved by this board for us to put more money into the dignity of our stops. We have new technology on all of our buses. The clever system will allow for better communication with our riders, better communication with our operators, better understanding about where our buses are when they have to go on detour. We have a new ERP system, multi-million-dollar ERP system, which means we won't have to manage our finances and our HR by spreadsheet anymore. We won't be using an outdated software system that is obsolete. That is moving forward as we speak. A new paratransit contract to hold our staff and our teams more accountable to providing that service on the street and be more effective with it. The new downtown transfer center in partnership with Richmond, that lease has been signed, and that project will be moving forward. I believe our chair will be asking for a slight update when I'm done talking, which I believe will be very shortly. The $10 million, $11 million in the bus grant. Again, we've been working for that for years, to be able to preserve our own funding for shelters and for fleet enhancements, to be able to have that money to come in to support us is an incredible win for this region. The new board structure, again, we've been talking since I got here about having Enrico come on the board and support these regional decisions, and that has happened during this past 3 years. The CDTA dedicated funding, which came to this region and is dedicated to GRTC to support maintenance of effort as well as growth and expansion of our system. I think that you haven't seen yet, but that you will see shortly, I've discussed it, is that we are in line for a significant increase in state TISDAC funding, operational funding year-over-year, because of what we have done through COVID has not just protected our ridership, but has rebounded our ridership unprecedented across the state. 14% higher than pre-COVID at this time. And because of those ridership levels based significantly on zero fares and with the restructure that was done before I got here, we will see a significant increase in our state funding operating funds in the future. These are things that happen in the first 3 years, and they don't even begin to touch the surface of what staff has done that even I haven't seen to keep us running every single day. The commitment to face fear the hostility of the region when everyone was feeling the pressures of COVID and the BLM marches and the presidential elections. I could not be prouder. But I've been here. I am devastated to be leaving, and I am just going to stop there because I might actually be emotional. Thank you so much for the opportunity, sir.
Thank you.
That ends my report.
I have a question on the live stream on the buses.
The live stream, yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that we need to get with labor on that because I don't want them to think that that can be used to affect them in any way as far as watching, so or whether they be penalized or used to penalize an operator showing him or her doing something on the bus. So I know it won't be used for that, but they need to know because that's a part of the labor contract.
At this time, that is not part of the labor contract.
I mean, it's not a part of the labor contract because it's not there yet. But before it arrived, I think that they need to understand why it's there.
Absolutely.
Have a meeting with them so that there won't be any comeback. Are you watching me all the time? When I wipe my nose, or whatever.
I think that's a fair point, and I think that it could very well be explained to them that to be able to have the amount of staff necessary to watch every bus all day, there's just no way that can happen. So I understand the fear, and we need to address it with empathy. But realistically, there's no way that we could actually ever do that kind of monitoring.
I know that, you know that.
Yeah, but they need to hear that. They need to hear that. Yes, sir.
So I have a couple items before we close this out. Adrian, give us 30 to 60 seconds on the state of the downtown transfer plaza.
Sure. We have finally got the contract signed as of last week, and all supporting documents are in. So we have set up the pre-construction meeting, is actually set for Monday, the 22nd. So we will have the engineer record as well as the construction in place, and have already coordinated with the city to keep them involved throughout every single step. Another update is we are still staying on the adjacency of the public safety building. We will be giving 4 weeks notice of when they do start the demo for that. So we've been coordinating with the city as well as construction team for that effort. So we hopefully they will align and all be done at the same time. If not, we still have an interim.
All right, this is something we've just been, it's an incredible achievement. So thank you all. Thanks to the city as well for making this happen. My thought is that we'll appoint a nominating committee for the officers of the board at the September meeting. So if that feels okay to you, that's our normal deal. You have to have new officers. They have to be elected by the new board when it first meets in October. So if we were to put a nominating committee together at September, which means each of the 3 delegations needs to give us who you want from your delegation to be on the nominating committee. We'll put it together in September. Those folks can know who's going to be appointed at the annual meeting of the corporation, which will occur a week before the October meeting. So you'll know who's going to be on from Richmond. You'll know who's going to be on from Chester Hill and Henrico. You can put together from those knowledge. You can put together who you want your officers to be and elect them when you begin in the October meeting. So if that's all right. Give me a name or come prepared with a name at the September meeting. So okay. So I want to say a few things about Julie, and Gary does too. You want to head off here and talk about her a little bit?
Sure. Do you mind if I talk about you for a little bit? Yeah, so we, 4 years ago, we had this great opportunity put in front of us to look for our next CEO. And so the board really was intentional around, wanting to find somebody who would take us to a new level, take us into a more strategic, more visionary level. We've been mostly kind of just serving the community and taking orders, as I would say. But we wanted to make GRTC a little bit more of a regional leader on the transportation front. And so we had this opportunity laid out in front of us. And so we went into the search process, and Julie didn't show up the first time, the first round we had. We had several people we interviewed. Nobody really got close to that. And then we started the second round. Eldridge, I know, really remembers this, because once Julie came in, started her discussion around regional mobility, nobody had ever really talked about regional mobility. It was all public transit and just kind of fixed route, this and that. And Julie came in and just blew us away with kind of her vision for regional mobility and various ways to move people around, and various ways to connect people, get them to where they need to go. And I remember looking over to Eldridge after Julie left, and we're done. Eldridge just said, we're done. Let's roll. And I was right there with him, and I think everybody else was in the room. And so then she executed on it. And unfortunately, we had this pandemic. It was unfortunate for many, many reasons, but it was really unfortunate for us because there were so many things that I think Julie would have been able to take us to new levels without some of those distractions. So I hate that, but I love that you were here to help us get through that and to get us to where we are today. And certainly will encourage all of us as we move forward with looking for our next leader, that we look for similar traits. And you know, to everybody here, you know, you guys did a great job of jumping on board with kind of this faster moving train. And I know we got derailed a little bit, but it was really a great team effort. So Julie, I applaud your leadership around all that. And thank you. It's probably one of the best, it's one of the best hires I've been associated with in my career.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank Gary was chair of the board when this happened. And what's so clear is the energy and the vision that Julie brought here. You know, she went right ahead with the COVID stuff, way ahead of the industry. The stuff that we did to try to make this thing work during COVID was really pretty much at the forefront of the country. And the zero fare thing, which starts there, also gives us the chance to continue that if we want to continue. It's been, now we piloted it, we can see what can happen through that. You know, if it wasn't enough to deal with COVID, we've added Enrico to the board and changed the nature of this board. We have gone into the CVTA. Richmond, Virginia actually has a regional transit system that is funded by a dedicated tax. That is an incredible achievement, and it's happened in this 2.5-year period. One thing that's very clear to me when I came in here, I couldn't tell what was going on, and the level of executive leadership from the entire team here is incredible. And the fact that we get this level of information, that you can be prepared properly for decision making, that you can see what the issues are, that these board meetings have within them a full report that gives you a sense of what's going on and gives you the ability to make decisions, is her creation, with an incredible group of people surrounding. And I just can't tell you what the difference is. And it is an amazing achievement. We're set up for the future. You know, we have obviously issues in getting enough personnel to drive our expansion. And we are going to continue to have financial issues in order to fund the expansion. But we are really set up to be a much more effective regional transit agency. And it's amazing. I mean, let's see, I've been in Richmond for over 50 years, and we finally got a bus to short pump. And we got one down Route 1 to the college currently known as BrightPoint. If you all know Richmond, this is an incredible achievement. And it's happened in this last couple of years. Julie's last day of work is the 9th of September. She has stayed on, you know, because basically she does a lot of work. And we needed that work. And I'm very grateful to her, and Gary and I are, that she's been willing to stay on to the end of her term to just be in here, helping us generate the work we need to do. Cheryl Adams, hi Cheryl, takes over on, is it the 10th of September? Bless your heart. As CEO. But let me just say that riding the bus with Julie is, what was that movie where that bus just goes going through town at 90 miles an hour? This is a woman with a lot of energy and a lot of desire and a lot of vision. I'm sure Seattle will test her to every possible thing she's got. But I'm very grateful for your work and for your visions and for what the foundation you've laid for this next period. And we do have to have a new opportunity here. So on behalf of the board, that's about what I got. I think we could stand and give you some applause for this work. Can you all stand up? We can do that. Now, if we were in my other venue, we'd be singing the hymn. But we don't have that. I'm hoping we're gonna have some food coming.
Pastries and bagels from Panera, and didn't expect the meeting to end this early. So it should be good. So it should be in a minute.
Okay. Is there any other business or conversation for this board?
Yeah,
Yes, you may.
I just want to say thank you for the words, and it would be remiss for me to take all of that credit on myself. It really was the board's work, and it really, more than ever, was the work of our operators, our mechanics, and the leadership in this room that made those things happen. There could have been no success without the team working together, so thank you.
I'd like to congratulate you on your, I want to say promotion. You do a lot of the company. What impressed me about Julie, when I first met her at her interview, I felt that she was a people person. I'm a people person. And that's what really pushed her over the line as far as my thoughts. Behind every successful leader is the staff. And I think that when you arrive here, you arrive with a good staff. You know, I think that the people that you brought in are amazing, first class people. You know, I hope whoever comes in now would be a people person, because we can make all the plans. I always say we can make all the plans and suggestions that we want, but unless we have the operators, mechanics, the office personnel that carry out those ideas, that the next person, that the CEO or COO or whomever in leadership present them with, it's the way they carry it out. They can make you, they can break you. And what I used to tell people is that CEO can leave and stay away 2 or 3 months. The place will run. But without the operators, mechanics, and the rest of the personnel, don't amount to a hill of beans. But you persuaded them, you know, you pulled them along. You can't take a rope and push nobody. But in order to be a good leader, you have to be out front. You can take that rope and pull them along, but you can't push them. And you did that. And you also asked me which I know here, is that, what do you think about them wearing shorts? You remember that? Remember that?
I remember that.
They wear shorts. I'm sure that your phone will be ringing in Washington State from Cheryl and others around the room here on your advice. You know. And Cheryl, you got your work cut out for you. That's right. Well, congratulations on Greater Richmond Training Conference.
It has been that, yes, thank you.
Okay. All righty, well, and I'm just looking around the room. Y'all got a lot to carry here. You know what we've been doing. It's really pretty incredible. And, you know, so the cheerleader goes away. But you have got to stay with this the way you've been doing it, because it's working. And given the stuff we've been up against with driver shortages and COVID, you know, it's really incredible that we're where we are. And I think our opportunities are great. And so, you know, remember the good stuff and let's go with it. And I'm hungry. Where's that stuff? All right, well, you were, unless there's other comment, you're officially adjourned and you can congregate.